to the quarterly dairy legal webinar, everyone, for the third quarter of 2024, focusing on state raw milk regulations. My name is Audrey Thompson. I'm a staff attorney here at the Penn State Center for Agricultural and Shale Law. Next slide, please. I'd like to thank our partner, the National Agricultural Law Center, for sponsoring this webinar. The National Agricultural Law Center at the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture serves as the nation's leading source of agricultural and food law research and information. This material is provided as part of that partnership and is based upon work supported by the National Agricultural Library, Agricultural Research Service, U.S. Department of Agriculture. Next slide. This webinar is the 17th webinar in our Dairy Quarterly Legal Webinar Series. Previous webinars have included discussions of federal milk marketing orders, geographical indications in dairy products, risk management, Pennsylvania milk marketing law, state milk pricing and support systems, and many, many more. Next slide, please. Webinars, our recordings and materials from all of those webinars are available on our Quarterly Dairy Legal Webinar landing page. Putting that in the chat right now for you. I'll also mention our Dairy and Dairy Products Law Virtual Resource Room and our Pennsylvania Milk Marketing Board Issue Tracker are also available resources on our website. There are links for those as well as the event page for this webinar where you can access the PowerPoint and all of the materials for this webinar. Next slide, please. We encourage you to mark your calendars and register for our upcoming programs. We've got 2 webinars left this year in our Understanding Agricultural Law Educational Series sponsored by the Pennsylvania Department of Ag's Ag Business Development Center. We've got Animal Disease Control and Quarantines on November 22nd, and then Understanding the Basics of Children, Minors, and Farm Work on December 13th. Both of those days are Fridays. They're at noon Eastern Time, and registration is up and available for those programs. And then we'll be back in 2025 with a whole new slate of programming. So stay tuned for upcoming topics and dates, both for this quarterly dairy webinar series and the Understanding Ag Law series. Next slide, please. And finally, just a few reminders before I turn this webinar over. We are recording this webinar, so just be aware of that. If you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A feature. I will collect them and ask them at the end. And we encourage you to fill out the survey at the end of this webinar. Tell us what you liked, where we can improve, what topics you'd like to see in the future. And if you would like us to submit this program for free CLE credits to the PACLE board, I just posted a link in the chat, posting it again one more time, and I'll post it again probably another couple times before we get to the code word, which brings me to the other point of that, what I was going to say here. We will provide a code word probably about halfway through, maybe near the end of this program. So you have to listen, have to pay attention, put that code word into the form as well as the other information asked for there as part of our responsibility to ensure attendance. We've got the code word going. Oh, we've got that. Okay. And then I can't tell right now, but if anyone is on the phone, if you're on the phone listening to this, and you need this form, I will email it to you. Please send me an email at aet17@psu.edu. That's aet17 Alpha Echo Tango 17@psu.edu, and I will send you the form so that you can fill it out and get your free CLE credits. All right, I will now turn this webinar over to Chloe Marie, our research specialist, who will present a roundup of this quarter's dairy legal developments. Chloe, the screen's all yours.
Thank you, Audrey, and welcome everyone to the roundup developments for the third quarter of 2024. So this quarter has been packed with action. The USDA has stepped up with substantial support for the dairy industry from allocating significant funds for dairy initiatives and organic dairy operations to providing relief for farmers impacted by HPAI. They have also been exploring changes to milk pricing and pushing for more research into HPAI vaccines. On the FDA side, there is talk of loosening regulations for grade A cottage cheese. On the regional level, states such as Pennsylvania and Colorado are taking steps to prevent the spread of HPAI. And on another note, Pennsylvania is even considering a new approach to raw milk butter production. And intentionally, the U.S. has secured a new trade deal with Chile, but faces challenges with Colombia, which has imposed temporary tariffs on U.S. milk powder imports. So it's quite a dynamic time for the dairy industry, and let's start with recent USDA actions. So on June 25, the USDA announced $12 million in grant funding for the dairy business innovation initiatives. This funding is meant to expand processing capacity, improve on-farm operations, and offer technical support to dairy producers. The grants will be allocated non-competitively to DBI programs at California State University, Fresno, the University of Tennessee, the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and the University of Wisconsin. Then on July 1st, the USDA Commodity Credit Corporation updated the Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish program to support dairy producers with losses related to HPAI. So for calculating milk production losses, the USDA will use the monthly national average milk production per cow, dividing this by 28 days to get a daily average. They then assume a 21-day period of no milk production for cows removed from the herd, followed by 7 days at 50% of normal production. And the final per cow payment rate will be based on this estimated milk loss multiplied by the national all milk price. And dairy producers have until January 30 of the following year to submit their notice of loss and payment application. Then on July 15, the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service proposed changes to the pricing provisions in the 11 federal milk marketing orders. So the federal milk marketing order is a complex pricing system that was put in place nearly a decade ago to support farmers facing low milk prices. However, since the COVID-19 pandemic, the US dairy market has struggled with a drop in demand for dairy products, especially fluid milk, leading to surpluses and lower prices. Additionally, changes from the 2018 Farm Bill, particularly the Class 1 scale milk price formula, further reduced revenue for milk producers. So in response, industry stakeholders pushed for a review of milk orders, especially the way Class 1 milk is priced. The USDA held a hearing from August 2023 to January 2024 to discuss proposed changes over a total of 49 days. And they eventually narrowed it down to 5 recommendations. So here is a quick rundown of what is being considered. First, the USDA wants to update the milk composition percentages used in pricing. So they are proposing to increase the standard levels to 3.3% for protein, 6% for other solids, and 9.3% for non-fat solids. Also, the FMMO milk prices are also linked to the wholesale prices of dairy products. And right now, the price of cheese is based on the average of cheddar cheese prices in 40-pound blocks and 500-pound barrels. And the new proposal would only use the 40-pound blocks to calculate the monthly average cheese price. Third recommendation, the USDA is also looking to update what they call make allowances, which are basically the cost of turning raw milk into dairy products. They want these allowances to better reflect today's processing costs and to adjust the butterfat recovery rate to 91%. Then the USDA wants to go back to using the higher of the Class 3 or Class 4 prices to set the base price for the skim milk used in fluid milk products. They also propose introducing a new adjustment method for extended shelf life milk products to make sure they are priced more fairly. And finally, the USDA wants to change how milk prices are adjusted based on location. They would keep the base adjustment at $1.60, but update the specific values for different areas to account for changes in the dairy industry. And according to the USDA regulatory economic impact analysis, these proposed changes would increase producer revenue and pool values while better reflecting the costs that producers and processors face today. And the public had until September 13 to submit their comments on the proposed changes. So stay tuned for more developments. bit fast. So on August 28th, the USDA Center for Veterinary Biologics announced it is now open to applications for field studies on non-viral, non-replicating vaccines for HPAI in livestock. So the big news here is that the USDA is now allowing these field studies to be conducted outside of containment facilities. And importantly, they will not require disposal of milk or other commodities. Before this, the Center for Veterinary Biologics required all studies, even those without virus exposure, to be conducted within containment facilities, regardless of their risk level. And finally, on September 30, the Commodity Credit Corporation and the USDA Farm Service Agency announced $58 million in funding for the Organic Dairy Marketing Assistance Program. So this program provides lump sum payments to eligible organic dairy farms to help cover their marketing costs for organic milk sold in 2023 or estimated for 2024. So for 2024, the payment rate has been increased from $1.10 to $1.68 per hundredweight of milk. And the maximum eligible production level for cost share support has been raised to 9 million pounds, so up from 5 million pounds. And applications for the program are open from September 30 through November 29, 2024. Now about recent FDA actions. So in November 2022, the FDA introduced the food traceability rule, which requires food manufacturers to maintain additional traceability records for certain foods, including certain cheeses, to help manage contamination risk. So currently, grade A cottage cheese is included in this rule. So this type of cottage cheese is produced under strict sanitary standards outlined in the Grade A Pasteurized Milk Ordinance, PMO, and these standards cover everything from sanitation and pasteurization to safe handling after pasteurization. The FDA, however, considers these existing PMO standards as already strict enough, making additional traceability requirements potentially redundant. So that's why, as a result, the FDA proposed an exemption from this additional traceability requirements for interstate milk shippers listed grade A cottage cheese. And the public comment period ended mid-September of this year. Now, regionally, in terms of recent regional actions to help prevent the spread of HPAI in dairy cattle, on June 15, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture issued a new quarantine order that impacts how dairy cattle can participate in agricultural shows and fairs. Any dairy cattle showing symptoms of HPAI will not be allowed to enter exhibitions. And if a farm has had confirmed cases of HPAI in either dairy cattle or poultry, all dairy cattle from that farm are banned from exhibitions until the state animal health official says the farm is disease-free. Additionally, cattle from farms located within a 3-kilometer radius of a confirmed HPAI case are also prohibited from participating in exhibitions until that area is declared disease-free. Now there are also testing requirements to consider. For dairy cattle over 18 months old, they must be tested for HPAI within 7 days before the exhibition. For lactating cows, milk samples will be tested, while nasal swabs will be collected from non-lactating cows. And another point is that for at least 30 days before any testing, these cattle must be kept in a secure, closed group, meaning no new cattle can be added during that time or afterward until they're ready to go to the exhibition. And all testing must be done by a USDA-approved veterinarian. It is also worth noting that cattle under 18 months old do not need testing before the exhibition. And if someone violates these requirements, they could face penalties under the domestic animal law, including FT fines of up to $10,000, license revocation, or even criminal charges. And in Colorado, on July 22nd, Colorado Commissioner of Agriculture, Kate Greenberg, along with the state veterinarian, also decided to take some action to protect dairy farms. She issued an order that requires all dairy cow farms licensed by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to submit weekly bulk samples. The goal here is to identify and separate cases of HPI in dairy herds to stop the virus from spreading to other dairy and poultry farms. So if a dairy farm gets a positive result from one of these bulk tank tests, that farm will be placed under quarantine. And this mandatory testing order became immediately effective until officials decide to update or cancel it with a new order. Now, not HPI related, on June 15, the Pennsylvania Department of Ag put out a notice in the bulletin about a proposed rule change to the state's milk sanitation law. The update is meant to give raw milk producers and consumers in Pennsylvania more options. Right now, under state regulations, raw milk can only be sold to people to drink if the seller has a permit from the Department of Agriculture. Raw milk producers are also allowed to sell standardized cheese products made from raw milk, but with this proposed change, raw milk permit holders would also be able to apply for permits to make raw milk butter. And additionally, the proposed rule would remove the requirement for pre-approval of labels for milk products, and manufactured dairy products. However, labels for raw milk will still need to go through the USDA for approval. Now, at the international level, in September, the United States and Chile reached an important agreement that brings new opportunities for U.S. cheese producers. This agreement ensures U.S. cheese products can be sold in Chile using common names such as cheddar, Gouda, mozzarella, burrata, provolone, etc. And I've included the full list here on this slide. Chile is one of the largest markets in South America, and this agreement opens up new opportunities for U.S. producers to export their products there. But this is also a strategic win for the U.S. in countering the European Union geographical indication system. The EU's GI system limits the use of certain names, such as feta or mozzarella, to products made in specific regions within the EU. And in contrast, the United States considers these terms generic and not exclusive to any region. And the EU has often included these GI protections in its own trade agreements with other countries, which could restrict US producers from using these names in some international markets. So for the US, keeping these terms generic helps ensure that US producers can use them freely when exporting globally. And integrating this agreement with Chile into the existing US-Chile free trade agreement also adds another layer of protection for US exporters, ensuring they are protected from any future restrictions. And finally, in early July, the Colombian Ministry of Trade, Industry and Tourism announced it would begin a countervailing duty investigation into U.S. milk powder imports. The USDA Foreign Agricultural Service mentioned it is the first time the Colombian government has launched such an investigation on its own, rather than responding to a petition from the industry. Specifically, the Colombian government suspects that U.S. milk powder exporters may be benefiting from U.S. government subsidies, giving them an unfair advantage in the Colombian market. So these subsidies could take the form of direct payments, tax breaks, or other forms of government support. And Colombia's investigation is specifically looking at several US programs, including the Dairy Margin Coverage Program, the Organic Dairy Marketing Assistance Program, the Dairy Business Innovation Alliance, existing dairy processor expansion grant, and farm loan program. So the investigation reveals that the influx of subsidized US milk powder has increased imports, and that the increased supply of importing milk powder has driven down domestic milk prices. So this lower pricing puts pressure on Colombian dairy farmers, as US producers can sell their milk powder at prices local producers cannot match, ultimately harming Colombia's dairy industry. And on September 16, 2024, the Colombian government made a preliminary decision to impose a temporary duty of 4.86% on US milk powder imports, effective immediately for the next 4 months. However, shipments already in transit or at customs before this date will not be impacted. And this provisional duty is a temporary measure while the full investigation continues. So that is all for today's dairy roundup developments, and I will